Right now, in the cold, dark sea, swims an animal that the rules of life say should be impossible. It weighs as much as 30 elephants. Its heart is the size of a small car, yet it feeds on a shrimp the size of your finger. Today we visit the loudest voice on Earth, a baby that gains 200 pounds a day, and the strange Ice Age secret that built a giant. If wonders like this hook you, hit like and subscribe. Get ready, we dive. Picture a single animal so long that if you laid it across a football field, its tail would hang off one end and its nose off the other. That animal is alive today. It is the blue whale, and it is the biggest creature that has ever lived on this planet. Bigger than any shark, bigger than any elephant, bigger than the largest dinosaur that ever shook the ground. Hold that picture for a second. A grown blue whale can stretch close to 100 feet long. That is taller than a 10-story building turned on its side. It can weigh up to 200 tons. To match that on a scale, you would need to stack about 30 elephants all at once. Nothing else comes close. The mighty Tyrannosaurus rex, king of the dinosaurs, was about 40 feet long. A blue whale is more than twice that. You could lay 2 full-grown rex skeletons end to end and still come up short. Here is the part that stops people cold. We share the Earth with the largest animal of all time right now, in our own ocean, breathing the same air we do. Most people will never see one. When a blue whale rises to breathe, it fires a spray of mist into the sky. That spout can climb 30 feet up, as high as a 2-story house. From a boat, you smell its breath before you see its body. Whale watchers say it hits you like warm, fishy fog. Then the back appears, and it keeps appearing, and appearing. A blue whale surfaces so slowly and runs so long that people gasp, because the body just will not stop sliding by. By the time the little fin near the tail shows up, the head has already slipped back under, far away. Their skin looks deep blue beneath the surface, like a shadow with a heartbeat. Up top it turns a soft grey, dabbed with pale spots, almost like someone flicked light paint across a dark wall. Each whale wears its own pattern. Scientists use those spots like fingerprints to tell one giant from another. Now think about how an animal gets this big. Every huge thing you can name had a huge meal behind it. Lions hunt zebras, sharks hunt seals. The dinosaurs that grew giant ate trees by the ton, or hunted other giants. So a blue whale must hunt something enormous too, right? That is where the whole story cracks open. The largest animal that has ever lived hunts the smallest food in the whole sea. Something so tiny you could hold 1,000 of them in one hand. Something most people have never even heard of. And the deeper scientists looked, the stranger it got. The math of this animal should not work. A body this size should starve. It should sink. Its own heart should struggle to push blood from end to end. By every rule we know about how living things are built, the blue whale sits right at the edge of impossible. So how does it pull it off? What is the tiny secret food that feeds the biggest mouth on Earth? The answer starts with a creature smaller than your finger. The secret food has a name, and it sounds far too small to matter. Krill. A krill looks like a tiny pink shrimp. Most are about the size of your pinky finger. They drift through the ocean in vast clouds, billions of them packed together, glowing faintly in the dark water. Scoop up a handful of sea near a swarm, and you might be holding 100 of them without knowing it. One krill weighs about as much as a paperclip. To a blue whale, a single krill is a crumb, a speck, nothing. So the giant skips the single bite. It eats them by the swarm. Here is the size of the appetite. During feeding season, a blue whale can pack away up to 16 tons of krill in one day. Picture 4 full-grown elephants made entirely of tiny shrimp, vanishing down one throat between sunrise and sunset. To get that much, the whale hunts swarms so thick the water turns red with them. When krill crowd together, they form clouds bigger than a school gym, hanging in the cold deep. The whale dives down, opens up, and swallows a piece of that cloud hole, and these swarms can be staggering. In the richest seas, krill gather in numbers so vast they rank among the largest gatherings of animals anywhere on Earth. A single swarm can stretch for miles and hold so many bodies that, from a plane above, the water looks stained a deep rusty red. All of it food, drifting and waiting. All of it the size of your finger or smaller. Think about how odd this is. The largest hunter on Earth waves off fish, waves off seals, waves off everything big and fast. It built its entire enormous life around one of the smallest animals in the ocean. It is like the strongest person alive choosing to live on single grains of rice and somehow growing bigger than a house doing it. That one choice shapes everything about the blue whale, its mouth, its throat, its travel routes, even its songs. All of it bends around the chase for krill, and the chase is rough in its own way. Krill do not wait around. They feel danger coming and scatter. A swarm can shatter in seconds and melt into the dark. So the whale cannot sit politely at the edge. It has to strike fast and take a giant bite before the cloud breaks apart. That is where the blue whale does something that looks almost violent. It turns its whole body into a living net and hurls itself at the swarm at full speed, mouth flung wide open. Scientists call this move lunge feeding. It is one of the strangest ways any animal on Earth eats. Watch one happen, and you would swear the whale was attacking. It charges, the throat balloons, the water boils, then the mouth slams shut on a chunk of ocean the size of a swimming pool. And here is the number that broke what scientists thought a living body could even do. In one single lunge, a blue whale swallows more than its own body weight in water. More than its own body weight in one bite. How can any animal open wide enough to do that without tearing itself apart? That answer is hiding inside its mouth. The blue whale's mouth is the largest mouth that has ever existed on Earth. When it opens, the lower jaw drops and swings wide, hinging open almost like the front loader on a digging machine. The gap is big enough to hold a small car. Some say you could fit a full-grown horse inside with room to spare, but the size of the opening is only half the trick. The real magic happens when the whale charges. A blue whale picks a thick swarm, points its head at it, and accelerates. It can hit speeds of more than 10 miles an hour in that final rush, fast for something the length of a basketball court. Then, at the last second, it throws its jaw open against the oncoming water. What happens next is wild. The water slams into that open mouth with so much force it nearly stops the whale dead in the sea. Imagine driving a car at full speed into a giant pillow. The whole body jerks. The whale loses almost all its speed in one violent gulp. In that instant, the mouth fills with a flood. Up to 100 tons of seawater and krill rush in together, more than the weight of the whale itself. The body swells out to nearly double its normal width. For a moment, the slim blue giant turns into a fat, bulging balloon of a creature. Scientists who study this call it the biggest single bite in the animal kingdom. Nothing else even comes close. Then comes the squeeze. The whale shuts its mouth and slowly forces all that water back out, while the krill stay trapped inside. We will get to how it keeps the food and dumps the water in a moment. Here is the part that amazes the people who study it. This giant bite is incredibly expensive. Charging at the swarm, opening that huge mouth, fighting the wall of water, all of it burns a massive amount of energy. One lunge tires the whale out, so the whale only does it when the payoff is worth it. It will swim right past thin, scattered krill and save its strength. It hunts for the thickest patches, the dense red clouds, and lunges only when the swarm is rich enough to repay the effort. That means a blue whale is doing math in the dark. Every gulp is a bet. Spend the energy now, hoping the mouthful pays it back many times over. Guess wrong too often, and a body this size starts to starve. A team of scientists once strapped small tracking tags to the backs of feeding blue whales. The tags recorded every dive, every turn, every lunge. What they found stunned them. The whales were rolling sideways, even flipping fully upside down, twisting their giant bodies to line up perfectly with the densest part of the swarm before they struck. A creature the size of a building doing barrel rolls in the black water just to aim its mouth. So the bite is solved. The whale can swallow an ocean. But now it has a new problem, and it is a strange one. Once that flood is inside, how does it keep the tiny krill and push all that water back out without losing a single meal? The trick is bolted to the roof of its mouth. Stretch your fingers wide and look at the skin between them. Now imagine that stretchy skin running all the way from a whale's chin to its belly button. That is the throat of a blue whale, and it is one of the strangest body parts in the sea. Down the underside of the whale run dozens of long grooves, like the pleats on an accordion. When the mouth is closed, they lie flat and tight against the body. You would barely notice them. But when the whale lunges and the water pours in, those pleats unfold. The whole throat balloons outward into a giant pouch. It can swell to hold more than the size of the rest of the whale. The slim body suddenly grows a huge, wobbling sack of seawater hanging beneath it, like a pelican's pouch blown up to the size of a school bus. This pouch is what lets the whale take such a monster bite. Without the stretch, the flood of water would have nowhere to go. The pleats give the ocean room to rush in, and the moment the bite is done, the skin snaps back into place, tight and smooth, ready for the next charge. It behaves a little like a thick rubber band that stretches to many times its size and pulls back without ever wearing out, and the stretch is extreme. The throat skin can expand to several times its resting size. Few materials we know of can pull that off again and again without ripping. A balloon stretched that far that often would burst. The whale's throat does it thousands of times across its life. Here is a hidden helper most people never hear about. Buried inside the chin of a blue whale sits a strange organ, a lump of nerves and stretchy tissue. Scientists found it only fairly recently, and it surprised them. They think it works like a sensor, telling the brain how far the mouth has opened and how full the pouch is during a lunge. A built-in gauge for the biggest bite on Earth. Picture the whole move now. The whale charges, the jaw drops, the water hits like a truck, the pleated pouch unfolds and swells to twice the body's width. The sensor in the chin fires signals to the brain. All of it happens in about 6 seconds. 6 seconds to swallow a swimming pool. Then the whale flips the process. It tightens the pouch and starts to squeeze. Slowly the bulging sac shrinks back down. Water streams out the sides of the mouth in a rushing flood. The pleats fold flat again. The slim blue shape returns like a balloon letting out its air. And somehow, after all that water has poured back into the sea, the krill stay behind, trapped, waiting to be swallowed. That is the part that should not work. Water can pour out through the gaps in a whale's mouth, sure, but krill are small, tiny. Many are no bigger than a grain of rice. How does a flood gush out while a cloud of speck stays trapped inside? If you have ever drained pasta in a strainer, you already know the answer. You just have never seen a strainer this big or this alive. The blue whale carries one built right into its jaws, and it is made of the same stuff as your own fingernails. Open a blue whale's mouth and look up at the roof, and you will see something that looks like a giant comb made of black hair. These are the baleen plates, and they are the whale's strainer. A blue whale has around 300 of these plates hanging down from its upper jaw, lined up in a row like the teeth of a comb. Each plate can be up to 3 feet long. The edges fray out into thousands of stiff bristles, so the whole thing feels like a wall of coarse hair or the bristles of a broom. Here is the surprise. Baleen is made of keratin. That is the very same stuff in your fingernails and your hair. So a blue whale strains its dinner through a curtain of overgrown fingernails. It has no real teeth at all, and like your fingernails, the baleen keeps growing through the whale's whole life. The hard work of straining tons of water wears the bottom edges down and frays them into those bristles, while fresh plate grows in from above to replace what is lost. The strainer repairs itself year after year, the same way your nails grow back after you trim them. Now picture the strainer at work. The whale has taken its giant gulp. Water and krill swirl together inside the mouth. The whale presses its huge tongue up and squeezes the pouch. The water rushes toward the gaps. As it pours out through the bristly plates, the krill cannot fit through. They catch on the bristles and stay trapped inside while the sea drains away. Drain the pasta, keep the noodles. Same idea, just scaled up to a mouth that holds a swimming pool. When the water has gone, the whale is left with a mouthful of squirming krill stuck to the baleen. It scrapes them loose with its tongue and swallows. Then it dives again and again, lunge after lunge, until the swarm thins out or the whale is full. This strainer is the reason the giant can survive on specks. Teeth would be useless here. You cannot bite a cloud of shrimp, but a strainer turns a single gulp into a meal of thousands all at once. That is the trick that makes the impossible math start to add up. The early baleen whales were small. They sipped at plankton in calm, gentle water. Over millions of years, this filter feeding turned into something far more powerful, and the bodies behind it swelled into giants. We will come back to that turn in the story later because it sits at the heart of our biggest question. For now, hold on to this. The blue whale eats more food in a day than you will eat in months, and it does it with no teeth, no chewing, and no chasing of single prey. Just a charge, a gulp, and a strainer made of fingernails. There is one more catch though, and it might be the strangest of all. The whale can take a bite the size of a swimming pool. It can strain out a ton of krill at once. You would think a mouth that huge could swallow almost anything, but it cannot. Behind all that power sits a throat so narrow that the largest animal on Earth would choke on a beach ball. How can the biggest mouth in the world lead to one of the smallest throats? The blue whale can swallow a swimming pool of water in one bite, but it could never swallow you. It is not even close. The throat of a blue whale, the actual tube that food slides down, is shockingly small. Some are only about as wide across as a grapefruit. A few may stretch a bit wider when something passes through, but only just. Stop and feel how strange that is. A creature the length of 3 school buses, with a mouth that holds a car, sends its food down a pipe you could wrap 2 hands around. So the giant gulp is a trick of sorting, not swallowing. The whale takes in a flood, strains out the krill, and then sends those tiny shrimp down that narrow tube in a soft, mushy stream. Krill are small and squishy, so they slip down easily, many at a time. Anything larger would get stuck. This is why the old sailor stories about whales swallowing men whole do not fit the blue whale at all. It physically could not do it. A human would never make it past the throat. The pipe is far too thin. There is an old tale of a man in a story who gets swallowed by a great whale and lives in its belly. People love that tale, but the blue whale is built so it could never act it out. The largest animal on Earth is, in a way, one of the safest giants you could ever meet. It has no interest in anything bigger than a fingernail-sized shrimp, and no way to swallow it even if it tried. Picture the whole strange machine now. A mouth the size of a room, a pouch that swells to twice the body, a strainer made of fingernails, and then, at the back of it all, a tiny soft tube barely wider than a melon. Every part of that machine is built for one job: catch huge clouds of tiny things and let nothing else through. Here is the catch that comes with it. Because the throat is so small, the whale is locked in. It cannot switch to bigger food if the krill run short. It cannot suddenly start eating fish or squid to get by. Its whole body, from the giant mouth to the narrow pipe, only works on swarms of tiny prey. We will see later just how dangerous that trap can be. A body this size, depending on the smallest food in the sea, is balanced on a knife's edge. When the krill are thick, the whale thrives. When the krill vanish, there is no backup plan. But before we get to the danger, we need to go deeper inside the body. Because if the mouth is amazing, the engine that powers it is almost unbelievable. To push blood through 100 feet of whale, you need a pump like nothing else alive. A pump so large that on the day scientists finally got to study one up close, they could barely lift it. It was the size of a small car, and it had been frozen solid for months just to keep it from rotting. What they learned from that giant heart changed how we picture life inside the largest animal of all. In a lab in Canada, A team of scientists once stood around a heart so big they had to move it with a forklift. It came from a blue whale that had washed up dead on a beach. The team wanted to save the heart, the largest heart of any animal on Earth, so the whole world could see it. The problem was its size. A blue whale heart weighs about 400 pounds. That is heavier than 2 grown men stacked together and roughly the weight of a baby grand piano. Hold your fist up, that is about the size of your own heart. Now imagine a heart you could not even wrap your arms around. A heart with 4 chambers, each big enough to crawl inside. To pump blood through a body 100 feet long, you need a monster pump. The blue whale's heart fits the job. With each single beat, it pushes around 60 gallons of blood through the body. That is enough to fill a bathtub. Every beat. 1 bathtub of blood, shoved out into the giant in a single squeeze. You can hear it too. When the whale's heart beats, the sound is so powerful that listening tools can pick it up from about 2 miles away. The heartbeat of a blue whale echoes through the water like a slow, deep drum. Now here is where it turns strange. You might think a heart this big beats fast and hard all the time. It does not. When a blue whale dives down deep to hunt krill, its heart does the opposite. It slows almost to a stop. Scientists managed to record the heartbeat of a wild blue whale during a deep dive. What they saw amazed them. On the way down, the heart slowed to just 2 beats per minute. 2. A pause so long between beats that it hardly seemed alive at all. Why slow down? Down deep, the whale is holding its breath, saving every scrap of oxygen. A slow heart sips oxygen gently instead of gulping it. So the giant glides through the dark with its huge heart ticking over barely twice a minute, like a clock running out of wind. Then the whale lunges. It charges the swarm, takes its giant bite, and suddenly needs power. The heart answers. It speeds back up, racing to push blood and oxygen to the straining muscles. When the whale finally surfaces and breathes, the heart climbs to its top speed, close to 40 beats a minute, recharging the whole body. So this heart is not just huge. It is a heart that can throttle itself from a near stop to a full sprint and back, over and over all day long on every dive. A 400-pound engine with a slow gear and a fast gear, switching between them in the dark. The scientists who studied this said the numbers sat right at the edge of what they thought a heart could do. Slow it anymore and the whale might pass out. Speed it anymore and the heart might not keep up with a body that size. The blue whale lives right on that edge, and the heart leads us to an even wilder feature. Because to carry a bathtub of blood with every beat, you need a pipe to carry it out. The main pipe leaving this heart is so wide that a small child could crawl through it. The largest blood vessel in a blue whale is so big that a small child could crawl along the inside of it. This pipe is called the aorta. In your body, the aorta is the main hose that carries blood away from the heart out to the rest of you. Yours is about as wide as a garden hose. In a blue whale, the aorta is wide enough to fit a human head, and then some. Some say a young kid could wriggle right through it like a tunnel. Think about why it has to be that big. Each heartbeat shoves out a bathtub of blood. All of it has to leave through this one main pipe, and then race to the far ends of a body the length of a basketball court. A narrow tube would never handle that flood, so the whale grew a blood vessel as wide as a sewer pipe, and the blood keeps moving through miles of vessels packed inside the whale. If you could pull out every blood vessel in a blue whale and lay it in a line, it would stretch for many miles. A whole hidden river system threaded through one animal. Here is a problem that comes with being this big, and it is a sneaky one. Heat. A blue whale spends much of its life in freezing water near the poles, swimming through seas cold enough to kill a person in minutes. A body that large makes a lot of heat. So how does it keep warm in icy water, yet not overheat when it works hard? The answer is a thick coat of blubber. Under the skin, a blue whale carries a layer of fat that can be up to a foot thick in places. It works like a wetsuit wrapped around the entire body, holding heat in and keeping the cold out. That blubber will become very important later. because it does far more than keep the whale warm. It is also a food bank, and the whale will live off it for months. The blood plays a clever trick with that heat too. In the flippers and tail, where the whale could lose warmth to the cold sea, the vessels run close together. Warm blood heading out passes right beside cool blood coming back and shares its heat with it. So the warmth gets trapped inside the body instead of leaking out into the ocean. It is a bit like two pipes hugging each other to swap heat, a quiet system humming away with no effort at all. All of this, the giant heart, the sewer pipe aorta, the river of vessels, the blubber wetsuit, exist to keep a 100-foot animal alive and moving. Every piece is scaled up past anything else in the animal world, and we have only looked at the heart and blood so far. We have not even touched the muscle that does the dirty work in the mouth, the huge, heavy, restless muscle that shoves out a swimming pool of water on every single bite. That muscle alone weighs as much as a full-grown elephant. It is the whale's tongue. The tongue of a blue whale weighs about as much as a full-grown elephant. Read that again and let it land. Not the whole whale, just the tongue. One single muscle inside the mouth weighs as much as an animal that can crush a car. A blue whale tongue can weigh around 3 tons. If you somehow set it on a giant scale, you would need a whole elephant on the other side to balance it. It is soft, heavy, and wide, filling the floor of that enormous mouth like a vast pink mattress, and this tongue is not just sitting there. It does the hardest job in the whole feeding machine. After the whale takes its giant gulp, the tongue is the muscle that drives the water out. It presses up and back, squeezing the bulging pouch, forcing the flood through the baleen strainer while the krill stay behind. Without this elephant-sized muscle, the whale could fill its mouth, but it could never empty it. The bite would be useless, so the tongue is the piston of the engine. It pushes the water, traps the food, and clears the mouth for the next charge. 3 tons of muscle, working through every single lunge. 16 tons of krill a day depending on it. Here is a darker fact that shows just how huge this tongue really is. When some whales have died and washed ashore, scientists have found small sea creatures living and feeding inside the open mouth around the tongue. The mouth of a blue whale is so vast it can become its own little world. There is also a grim danger tied to that giant tongue, and it tells you something about the whale's size. Now and then, when a dead blue whale floats for too long, gas builds up inside its body as it breaks down. The pressure grows and grows. In rare cases, the body can burst, and the tongue is often part of what gives way. Crews who handle stranded whales have to be very careful, because a body that large holds forces most people never imagine. Step back and picture the full mouth one more time. The jaw that holds a car, the pleated pouch that swells to twice the body, the fingernail strainer with its 300 plates, the narrow throat no wider than a melon, and the elephant-sized tongue pumping it all. Every part is a record breaker. Together they make the largest feeding machine that has ever existed. But here is the thought that should be growing in your mind. To build all of this, to grow a heart the size of a car and a tongue the size of an elephant, the whale needs a staggering amount of food and a staggering amount of time. Or does it? Because the strangest growth story of all does not belong to the adult. It belongs to the baby. A blue whale calf does something no other animal on Earth can match. It grows faster than anything alive. A newborn blue whale can pack on the weight of a large adult human every single day, and it pulls that off drinking nothing but its mother's milk. A baby blue whale is already one of the largest animals on the planet on the day it is born. Most babies start small. A human baby fits in your arms. A kitten fits in your hand. A blue whale calf comes into the world about 25 feet long. That is the length of a school bus. On its very first day, the newborn already outweighs a hippo and stretches longer than most living rooms. It is born underwater, tail first, deep in warm seas near the equator. The mother nudges it up to the surface for its first breath, and from that first gulp of air the calf begins to grow at a speed that sounds made up. A baby blue whale gains around 200 pounds a day, every single day. That is the weight of a grown man added to its body between one sunrise and the next. In just 1 week, it can pack on the weight of a small horse. Picture that for a second. You go to sleep, you wake up. The calf is 200 pounds heavier than it was the night before, then it does it again the next day, and the next, for months. By the time it is a few months old, the calf has ballooned to around 50 feet long, the length of a large truck, and tipped the scales at tens of thousands of pounds. It started the size of a bus and grew into a giant in less time than it takes you to finish a school year. No other animal on Earth grows this fast. Nothing comes close. The blue whale calf holds the record for the fastest growth of any creature alive. And here is the part that makes scientists shake their heads. The calf does all of this on a diet of pure milk. No krill, no solid food at all. Just milk from its mother for months on end. So the milk has to be like nothing else. And it is. We will look at that strange, thick milk in a moment, because it might be the richest food on the planet. For now, sit with the size of the task. To grow 200 pounds a day, the calf needs a flood of nourishment pouring into it almost without stopping. Think of a fire hose aimed into a bucket that keeps getting bigger. There's a quiet drama hiding behind all this growth too. The mother is paying for every pound. While the calf balloons, she's barely eating. She's spending her own body to build her baby, melting down her blubber to make milk. As the calf gets heavier, the mother often gets thinner. That trade, mother shrinking while baby swells, is one of the most extreme acts of giving in the animal world. And it cannot last forever. The mother can only pour herself out for so long before she has to feed again or risk her own life. So what kind of milk can grow a bus into a giant in a few short months? What is in it that makes such impossible growth possible? It turns out the answer is so rich that it barely flows at all. It comes out more like toothpaste than like the milk, you know. The milk of a blue whale is so thick and fatty that it looks more like soft toothpaste than like the milk in your fridge. The milk you drink is mostly water. A blue whale's milk is the opposite. It is loaded with fat, sometimes close to half fat by weight. That is what makes it so rich and so good at building a giant fast. Each mouthful is packed with the energy a calf needs to gain 200 pounds a day, and the amount is just as staggering as the richness. A blue whale calf can drink around 50 gallons of milk in a single day. Picture a bathtub slowly filling with thick, creamy milk and a baby whale draining most of it before sundown. Here is something that surprises people. The calf cannot suck like a human baby. Underwater, with no lips to seal around anything, normal nursing would just fill the calf's mouth with seawater. So the whales found another way. The mother has strong muscles around her milk glands. When the calf nudges the right spot, she squeezes those muscles and shoots the milk straight into the calf's mouth in a thick jet. The calf does not suck the milk. The mother pumps it in. It is less like drinking and more like a power washer of milk firing into the baby's throat. That jet of fatty milk is the secret engine behind the fastest growth on Earth. Pour enough of it in day after day, and a bus-sized newborn balloons into a 50-foot giant in just a few months. But every drop of that milk costs the mother dearly. She makes it out of her own body. While the calf feasts, she fasts. She may go months barely eating, living off the thick blubber she built up earlier, melting it down and turning it into milk. Think of her as a giant battery slowly draining. She charged up in cold, krill-rich waters before the birth. Now, in warm seas with little food, she spends that charge to grow her baby. By the time the calf is ready to feed itself, the mother can be worn thin and badly in need of a giant meal. This is one of the great gambles of being a blue whale. The mother bets her own body that she can grow the calf big enough, fast enough, to survive the long trip back to the feeding grounds before she runs out of stored fat herself. It is a race against an empty tank. Grow the calf, spend the blubber, get back to the krill before the fuel runs dry. Most of the time, the gamble pays off. The calf grows strong. The mother makes it back to the rich cold waters and refills her tank. The cycle begins again. But the speed of that growth raises a deeper question, one that puzzled scientists for years. How can any body grow that fast without breaking down? How does a calf add the weight of a grown man every day without something going wrong inside? The answer reveals just how finely tuned the blue whale really is, and it shows that this giant is balanced far more delicately than its size suggests. A blue whale calf grows so fast that, in its first months, its body is almost a building site that never stops. To gain 200 pounds a day, the calf has to do something most bodies could never manage. It has to turn fatty milk into bone, muscle, blubber and organ tissue at a furious pace, all at once, all day long. Imagine a house being built so fast you could watch the walls climb hour by hour. This is where the mother's gamble gets tense. She's pouring 50 gallons of rich milk into the calf each day, and she's doing it on an empty stomach, far from the krill. Her blubber is melting away to feed the flood. Scientists who study mother whales have seen them grow visibly thinner across the nursing season, their once smooth bodies turning lean and bony along the back. So both lives are on a timer. The calf must grow strong enough to swim thousands of miles. The mother must hold out until she can feed again. If the journey to food takes too long, or if the feeding grounds are poor that year, the whole gamble can fail. Here is a quiet truth that makes the blue whale feel less like an unstoppable giant and more like a creature walking a tightrope. Being huge is expensive. The bigger the body, the more fuel it burns just to stay alive, and the harder it is to find enough food to pay the bill. The calf's blazing growth is amazing, but it leaves no room for error. Mother whales seem to know this. They guard their calves closely and keep them near, swimming side by side through the open sea. A calf that strays could meet the one ocean hunter brave enough to attack a young blue whale. We will meet that hunter later, and it is smaller than you might guess. For now, picture the pair moving together through warm blue water. The mother, lean and tired, her body spent on milk. The calf, fat and fast-growing, drinking her dry. Both heading toward a goal that lies thousands of miles away, in cold seas near the poles, where the krill bloom thick. That long trip is one of the greatest journeys any animal makes, and the calf has to be ready for it after only a few months of life. A few months to grow from a newborn into a swimmer strong enough to cross an ocean. By the time the calf is weaned, it has done something staggering. It has grown longer than a fishing boat and heavier than a loaded truck, all from milk alone, all in less than a year. And then the milk stops. The calf has to learn the family business, the charge, the gulp, the strainer. It has to find swarms of krill and feed itself for the first time. But there is one tool the young whale carries that it will use long before it ever takes a bite on its own. A tool that lets it reach across hundreds of miles of dark water to stay in touch with its mother and its kind. The blue whale has a voice, and it is the loudest voice on the entire planet. The loudest animal on Earth is not a lion, it is not an elephant, it is the blue whale. When a blue whale calls out, its voice can reach around 180 decibels. To picture that, think of a jet engine roaring at takeoff. That hits about 140 decibels, loud enough to damage your ears from across a runway. The blue whale is louder still. Its call is one of the most powerful sounds any living thing has ever made. If you stood right next to a calling blue whale underwater, the sound would do more than hurt. It would hit your body. The energy in that call is strong enough that you would feel it shake your chest, like standing in front of the speakers at a concert turned up far past safe. To put the power in plainer terms, picture the loudest thing you have ever stood near. A roaring crowd at a stadium, a jet screaming overhead, a clap of thunder right above your house. The blue whale's call carries more raw sound energy than any of them. It is the single loudest noise that any living thing on the planet is known to make. Here is the strange part. You probably could not hear most of it with your ears at all. Much of the blue whale's voice is too low for humans to hear. These are deep, rumbling sounds that sit below the bottom of human hearing, more felt than heard. The ocean is full of these giant low notes, rolling through the water all the time, and we are mostly deaf to them. Why so loud, and why so low? It comes down to a simple fact about the sea. Low sounds travel farther through water than high ones. A deep rumble can roll on for miles before it fades, while a high squeak dies out fast. So a giant that wants to be heard across the ocean makes its voice deep and powerful, a foghorn built into a living body. And the blue whale does not even have the kind of voice box you might expect. It has no vocal cords like ours. Scientists think it makes these huge sounds by pushing air through special pouches and tissues inside its body, looping the same air around so it can call even while holding its breath deep underwater. The exact way it does this is still being worked out. Some of the machinery of the loudest voice on Earth remains a puzzle. Imagine the scene. A blue whale alone in the dark, miles from any other living thing it can see. It opens up that hidden voice and lets out a low note so powerful it shakes the water. The sound spreads out in every direction, rolling across the cold sea, searching, and somewhere far away, another blue whale stops and listens. Because the truly mind-bending part is not how loud the call is, it is how far it goes. A blue whale's voice does not just carry across a bay or a stretch of coast. Under the right conditions, it can travel across an entire ocean. One whale calling, another whale hundreds of miles away hearing it. How can a single voice cross that much open sea and still be heard? The ocean turns out to have a secret highway for sound, and the blue whale knows exactly how to use it. A blue whale in one part of the ocean may be heard by another whale hundreds of miles away. That sounds impossible. Shout as loud as you can on land and your voice fades within a few streets. Yet a blue whale's call can roll across a stretch of sea as wide as several states. How? The ocean hides a secret highway for sound, and scientists have known about it for a long time. Deep below the surface sits a layer of water where sound behaves in a special way. Once a low call slips into this layer, it gets trapped there, bouncing gently along instead of spreading out and dying. It can travel for enormous distances inside that layer, like a marble rolling down a long, smooth pipe. This deep sound channel is the whale's long-distance phone line. The blue whale's voice is low enough and powerful enough to ride it. So when a whale calls from deep in the right layer, the sound does not just fade away, it races off along the channel, carrying for miles and miles before anyone hears it. People first found this sound channel while listening to the ocean for other reasons. They lowered listening tools deep into the sea and were amazed at how far a single sound could travel. Later, the same kind of listening picked up the long, low moans of blue whales rolling through the deep, sometimes from hundreds of miles off. Think about what this means for the whales. A blue whale lives a life spread thin across a vast empty ocean. It often swims alone or in small pairs, with no other whale in sight for days. The sea is huge and the whales are few. On land, that would mean total loneliness, but sound changes everything. With a voice that crosses oceans, a blue whale is never truly out of touch. It can call into the dark and reach others far beyond sight. It is a bit like sending a text that travels for hundreds of miles, except the message is a deep, rolling note in the water. Scientists believe the whales use these long calls to stay in contact, to find each other across the emptiness, and maybe to find a mate. A lone whale calling, and a distant whale answering, threading the giants together across a sea too big to cross by sight alone. There is a famous story that shows how powerful this is. For years, listeners picked up a single whale calling at an unusual pitch, higher than the rest, travelling the ocean alone. Some called it the loneliest whale because its odd voice seemed not to match the others. People around the world became fascinated by it, wondering if it ever found a friend. The truth behind that whale is still debated, but the story shows how deeply these voices reach into us. So the blue whale's call crosses oceans, it links the giants across the dark. That much we understand. But there is a deeper mystery in these songs, and it is one that scientists are still chasing. Not every blue whale sings, only one half of them does, and the ones that sing seem to be sending a message we still cannot fully read. Out of all the blue whales in the sea, only the males truly sing. The ocean is full of blue whale sounds, Short calls, low rumbles, signals that any whale might make. But the long patterned songs, the ones that repeat over and over in a steady rhythm, come almost entirely from the males. A female blue whale makes sounds, yes, but she does not perform the long song. The males are the singers, and scientists are fairly sure they know why, even if some pieces are still missing. The leading idea is simple and old as life itself. The song is about finding a mate. A male blue whale, swimming alone in the vast dark, sings to announce himself. His deep, repeating notes roll across the ocean, telling any female in range that he is here, he is strong, and he is ready. Picture it. A male whale, far out in the open sea, singing the same low pattern again and again for hours. Some males sing for most of the night. The song carries across the deep sound channel, reaching out across miles of water, hunting for a listener. He cannot see who, if anyone, is out there. He simply sings into the dark and trusts that the sound will find her. Why would only the males do this? In much of the animal world, the males are the ones who show off to win a mate. Birds sing, deer clash their antlers, frogs croak through the night. The male blue whale joins that ancient contest with the most powerful song of all, a serenade that can cross an ocean. There may be more to it, though. Some scientists think the songs also help males space themselves out, so they do not all crowd into the same patch of sea. Others think the songs might pass along information about where the food is, or where the whales should travel. The full meaning is still being teased apart. We can hear the song clearly. We just cannot fully translate it yet. That gap between hearing and understanding is part of what makes the blue whale so fascinating. Here is the largest animal on Earth, singing the loudest songs on the planet, in patterns it repeats with care, and we still cannot say for sure everything those songs mean. A whole language, rolling through the deep, mostly beyond our reach. There is something almost lonely in the picture. A single male, miles from any other whale, pouring out a song for hours into the empty dark, hoping it reaches someone. And sometimes it does. Somewhere far off, a female changes course and swims toward the sound. Scientists track these songs by lowering microphones into the sea and listening for months on end. Over time, they have learned to tell different groups of blue whales apart by their songs, because whales in different parts of the world sing in slightly different styles, like accents. And those accents lead to one of the strangest discoveries of all. When scientists listen to the same group of whales year after year, decade after decade, they noticed something no one expected. The songs were changing, slowly, steadily, across the whole ocean. The blue whales were singing lower and lower, and no one is completely sure why. For more than 50 years, blue whales all over the world have been singing in deeper and deeper voices, and scientists cannot fully explain it. This is one of the strangest puzzles in all of ocean science. When researchers compared old recordings of blue whale songs with new ones, they spotted a slow, steady drop in pitch. Each year, the whales were singing a little lower than the year before, and this was not happening in just one group. It was happening across the whole planet, in oceans far apart, all at the same time. Think about how odd that is. Blue whale groups in different parts of the world rarely meet. They are separated by thousands of miles of sea. Yet somehow, they're all lowering their songs together, in step, year after year. As if the entire species quietly agreed to change its tune. Scientists have chased this mystery for years, and they have come up with several ideas. None of them is a perfect fit. One idea ties it to whaling. After humans nearly wiped out the blue whales, very few were left, scattered far apart. To reach each other across that emptiness, the whales may have needed to call as far as possible, and lower notes travel farther. Now that the whales are slowly coming back and are closer together again, the thinking goes, they may not need to strain for distance so they can afford to sing a touch lower. It is a clever idea, though it does not explain every detail. Another idea points to the changing ocean itself. As the seas take in more of the gases we pump into the air, the water is slowly changing, and that may change how sound travels through it. A shift in the ocean could nudge the whales to shift their songs to match. This too is only part of a possible answer. There is even a simpler thought. As the population recovers and the biggest, oldest males return, their deeper voices may be pulling the whole average down. Bigger bodies often make lower sounds. The honest truth is that scientists do not yet know for certain which of these is right, or whether the real cause is something they have not thought of at all. The blue whale is changing its voice in front of us, across the entire planet, and we can measure it perfectly while still not knowing why. That is a humbling thing. We have tracked these songs for decades. We have the recordings. We can graph the slow slide downward, year by year, and the largest animal on Earth still keeps its secret. It is a good reminder that these giants are not just big bodies. They are living, changing creatures with habits we're only beginning to understand. Somewhere out there right now, a blue whale is singing a song a little deeper than its grandparents sang for reasons it will never tell us. So far we have stayed with the whale in one stretch of sea, but blue whales do not stay still. They are among the greatest travellers in the world, crossing thousands of miles of open ocean every year. And the most amazing part of that journey is what they do not do along the way. For months on end, these giants barely eat at all. Every year, a blue whale crosses thousands of miles of open ocean, swimming from one end of the world to the other and back. This is one of the longest journeys any animal makes. In summer, blue whales gather in cold seas near the poles, where the water is rich and the krill bloom thick. There they feast, gulping 16 tons of krill a day, packing on blubber as fast as they can. Then, as the cold season comes, they turn and swim toward the warm waters near the equator. There the females give birth and the calves are safe in gentle seas. When the calves are strong enough, the whales turn around and swim all the way back to the cold feeding grounds. The round trip can stretch across thousands of miles. Picture swimming from the top of the map to the middle and back again, through open water, with no land to rest on and no road to follow. The blue whale does this every year of its life. How does a creature find its way across an ocean with no signs and no landmarks? Scientists are still piecing this together. The whales may follow the shape of the seafloor far below, or sense the pull of the earth itself, or remember routes learned long ago. The full map inside a blue whale's head is still a mystery. Somehow these giants cross the blank blue desert of the open sea and arrive exactly where they need to be. Here is the part that stuns the people who study them. During this whole long trip, the blue whale barely eats. The warm waters where they breed hold very little krill, so as the whales travel and breed, they are running mostly on empty. For months, the largest animal on Earth lives almost entirely off the fat it stored up earlier. Stop and think about that. A body the size of a building swimming thousands of miles giving birth, making 50 gallons of milk a day, and doing nearly all of it without a proper meal. It is like a person running across a whole country on the breakfast they ate weeks ago. The fuel for this comes from the blubber. In the rich cold seas, the whale stuffs itself and builds a thick layer of fat across its body. That fat is more than a warm coat. It is a fuel tank. On the long journey south and back, the whale slowly burns through it, melting the blubber to power every stroke of its tail and every drop of milk. By the time a mother whale returns to the feeding grounds, she can be thin and worn, her fuel tank close to empty. Everything now depends on the krill being there, thick and ready, so she can fill the tank again before the cycle repeats. This is the rhythm of a blue whale's life. Feast in the cold, fast on the move, burn the fat, race back to feed before it runs out. And that long fast, that strange ability to live for months off stored fat, is a clue to one of the deepest questions about these animals. Why are they so big in the first place? The answer is tangled up with that very fat and with a frozen chapter of Earth's history. But first, let us look closer at what it really means to live off your own body for months. For months at a time, a blue whale lives off its own body, slowly eating itself from the inside to stay alive. This is the fasting season, and it is one of the toughest tricks in the animal world. After feasting all summer in the cold, The whale swims off to warm waters where there is almost no food, so it switches off the hunting and switches on the fuel tank. The thick blubber under its skin becomes its meal, day after day, for months. Burning fat for fuel is something your body can do too in a small way. Skip a meal, and your body starts dipping into its fat stores to keep you going. The blue whale does the same thing, but on a giant scale and for a shockingly long time. It can lose a large slice of its body weight across a fasting season, melting away pounds of blubber to power the journey. Picture the whale getting visibly slimmer as the weeks pass. The smooth, rounded body of late summer turns leaner. The fuel tank empties drop by drop, and the whole time the whale keeps swimming, keeps breeding, keeps making milk, all powered by fat alone. This is where being huge starts to look like a clever plan. A bigger body can store more fat. More fat means a bigger fuel tank. A bigger fuel tank means the whale can travel farther and fast longer before it runs dry. So the giant size is partly built for this exact problem. Be big enough to carry months of fuel across a hungry ocean. But there is a trap inside that plan, and it is the heart of our whole story. A bigger body does not just store more fuel, it also burns more fuel. The larger the whale, the more food it needs just to stay alive, so size cuts both ways. It lets the whale carry a huge tank, but it also makes the tank drain faster. This means a blue whale is always playing a careful balancing act. It must eat enough in the rich season to fill a tank big enough to survive the lean season. If the feeding grounds fall short one year, if the krill do not bloom thick, the whale can run out of fuel far from home. A body this large has no small backup. When the tank runs dry, there is no quick snack to fix it. The whale needs swarms, and lots of them. So the blue whale's life swings between feast and famine, between stuffing itself and starving on purpose. Cold seas mean food, warm seas mean fasting. The whole giant body is tuned to ride that swing year after year for a lifetime that can last longer than most humans live. That careful balance raises the biggest question of all. If being huge is such a gamble, such a tightrope walk between full tanks and empty ones, then why did the blue whale ever get this big? What pushed it past every other animal in history into this risky, record-breaking size? To answer that, we have to leave the living whale behind for a while and travel back in time. Far back, to a world of growing ice and changing seas, where the secret of the blue whale's size was slowly, quietly forged. Before we travel back in time, there is one more wonder of the living whale to face. How does it find its way through a world of total darkness? Sunlight only reaches the top layer of the ocean. Go down far enough, and the light gives out completely. The deep sea is one of the darkest places on Earth, a black world that stretches for miles in every direction. Yet the blue whale dives into it again and again, hunting krill in water where it can barely see its own flippers. So how does a giant move through the dark without crashing, without getting lost, without losing the swarm? Part of the answer is sound, and part of it is still a mystery scientists are working to solve. Sound is the whale's eyes in the dark. The ocean carries sound far better than it carries light. Where light dies in a few hundred feet, sound rolls on for miles. So the blue whale lives in a world it mostly hears rather than sees. Its giant low calls bounce through the water, and its sharp hearing picks up the echoes and rumbles of the sea around it. In a way, the whale paints a picture of its world out of sound instead of light. This is different from what some other whales do. Dolphins and certain other whales send out clicks and read the echoes to find prey, a built-in form of natural radar. Blue whales are not known to hunt with sharp clicks like that. Instead, they seem to use their excellent hearing to sense the larger world, to stay in touch across great distances, and perhaps to read the shape of the sea around them. For finding the krill itself, the whale may use other clues. Krill often gather in the same kinds of places where cold, food-rich water rises up. A blue whale that has fed for years likely learns where and when the swarms appear. Memory becomes a map. The oldest whales may carry routes in their minds, passed down and learned over a long life, guiding them to the richest patches season after season. And for the long journeys across the open ocean, scientists suspect the whales may sense Earth's own magnetic pull, the same invisible force that swings a compass needle. If true, the whale would carry a kind of inner compass, helping it hold a steady course across blank, featureless sea. This is still being studied. We do not yet have the full picture of how a blue whale navigates. What we do know is humbling. The largest animal on Earth crosses the planet and dives into total darkness with senses we're only starting to understand. It hears a world we cannot hear, may feel forces we cannot feel, and finds its way through a black ocean with a skill that still slips past our science. That is the living blue whale, Blue, a giant of mouth, heart, voice, and journey, balanced on the edge of what a body can do. But it was not always this big. For most of the history of whales, nothing like the blue whale existed. The ancestors of this giant were small, gentle filter feeders, far smaller than the monster we know today. So what happened? What turned a modest whale into the largest animal of all time? The trail leads back millions of years to a planet locking itself in ice. For tens of millions of years, whales stayed small. The giant we know today is a very recent surprise. This is the twist at the centre of our whole question. When you look at the blue whale, it feels timeless, like it must have ruled the seas forever. But the fossils tell a different story. For most of whale history, there were no giants at all. The first whales appeared in the ocean a long, long time ago, and they were modest in size. One of the earliest known whales was only about 13 feet long, roughly the size of a dolphin. Over millions of years, whales spread through the seas, but they stayed mostly mid-sized. A whale the length of a school bus would have seemed enormous back then. Even after the filter feeders appeared, the baleen whales that strain their food, they stayed fairly small for ages. They sipped at tiny prey in calm water with their fingernail strainers, but their bodies never ballooned into giants. For most of their long history, baleen whales were the size of a boat at most, far from the 100-foot monster we know. So the blue whale's giant size is not some ancient settled fact. In the long story of life on Earth, it is brand new. Scientists who study whale fossils were struck by this. They measured the skulls of dozens of extinct whales, going back tens of millions of years, and used those to estimate body size over time. The pattern was clear. For age after age, whales stayed modest. Then, fairly recently, in the last few million years, they suddenly shot up in size. Recently is a strange word here. We are talking about a few million years, which sounds like forever to us. But in the long history of life, with whales going back tens of millions of years, a few million years is like the last page of a thick book. One scientist put it well, saying the giant whales appeared only in what he called a geological yesterday. This raises a sharp question. If whales got along just fine at modest size for tens of millions of years, what changed? Why did several kinds of whales, all around the same time, suddenly start growing into giants? Something must have shifted in the ocean, all at once, to make hugeness pay off. For a long time, people guessed it was about defense. Maybe whales grew giant to fight off the monster sharks and fierce hunters of the ancient seas. A bigger body is harder to attack. It seemed to make sense, but the timing did not fit. When scientists pinned down when the whales actually got big, it lined up poorly with the age of those great predators. The giants appeared too late for that story to work cleanly. The real trigger had to be something else, and when scientists looked at what was happening to the whole planet at the moment the whales ballooned, they found a clue that pointed not to hunters, but to ice. The world was turning cold. Vast sheets of ice were spreading across the land, and as the planet froze, the ocean itself began to change in a way that would feed a giant. The blue whale may owe its giant size to ice. Around the time whales ballooned into giants, the whole planet was cooling down. Great sheets of ice were spreading across the northern lands, grinding their way over rock and soil. The world was sliding into an age of ice. with frozen seasons growing harsher and longer. At first, ice seems like bad news for life. Cold, harsh, deadly. How could a freezing planet build the largest animal of all time? The answer lies in what the ice did to the land and the sea. As the ice sheets grew and crept across the ground, they acted like giant graters. They scraped over rock, crushing it into fine bits, loaded with the minerals that living things need to grow. When the ice melted at its edges in the warmer seasons, all that ground up mineral-rich material washed off the land and poured into the ocean. Think of it as the planet fertilizing its own seas. The ice ground the land into rich dust, and the meltwater carried that dust into the water. And in the ocean, those minerals are food at the very bottom of the food chain. They feed the tiny drifting plants of the sea, which feed the krill, which feed the whales. So as the ice spread, the seas near the ice grew incredibly rich. Bursts of nutrients led to bursts of tiny sea plants, which led to massive blooms of krill. Suddenly the ocean was growing thick clouds of the exact food a filter-feeding whale loves best. But there was a catch, and the catch is the whole secret. This new richness was not spread out evenly, and it was not there all year. It came in patches, and it came in seasons. The meltwater poured in during the warmer months, in certain places near the ice, and triggered huge blooms there and then. The rest of the time, and in other places, the sea could be much poorer, so the ocean changed its rules. Before, food for whales had been spread fairly evenly, here and there, in modest amounts almost everywhere. Now it came in a new pattern. Enormous feasts of krill, packed into certain spots at certain times of year, with lean stretches in between. That new pattern, rich patches far apart in space and time, turned out to favour a very particular kind of whale. A whale that could travel far to reach the patches. A whale that could eat enormous amounts fast when it found one. A whale that could store up fat to ride out the lean stretches between feasts. In other words, the new ocean rewarded being big. This was the trigger scientists had been hunting for. The cooling planet, the grinding ice, and the rich, patchy, seasonal blooms of krill all lined up with the moment whales began to balloon. The defense from sharks idea faded. The ice and the krill explanation stepped forward. But the ice was only part of the engine. There was a second force at work in the sea, an invisible elevator that hauled food up from the deep and dumped it where the whales could reach it. Without it, even the Ice Age might not have grown a giant. There is an invisible elevator in the ocean, and it is one of the real reasons the blue whale exists. Scientists call it upwelling. The name sounds plain, but what it does is amazing. Upwelling is the rising of cold, food-rich water from deep in the ocean up to the surface, where sunlight can reach it. It is the sea lifting its hidden riches up to the light. Here is how it works. The deep ocean is dark and cold, but it is packed with nutrients, the leftover bits of dead sea life that drift down over time and pile up below. Up at the surface there is plenty of sunlight, but often little food, because the tiny sea plants there have used up what was available. So the surface has light without food, and the deep has food without light. Upwelling brings the two together. When strong winds blow across the sea in the right way, they push the surface water aside, and cold water from below rises up to take its place. That rising water carries the deep nutrients up into the sunlight, and when food and light finally meet, the surface explodes with life. The tiny sea plants bloom in vast green clouds. The krill swarm in to eat them, breeding fast and packing together in thick red patches, and the blue whales come to feast on the krill. A whole chain of life, all sparked by water rising from the dark. Now connect this to the Ice Age. As the planet cooled, the winds grew stronger and the patterns shifted. Stronger winds meant more upwelling. More upwelling meant more nutrients reaching the light, in certain places in certain seasons. The krill blooms grew thicker and more crowded than ever before. That is the key. Scientists studying why whales grew giant found that it was not just having lots of food, it was having food packed into dense, thick patches. A whale does not get bigger just because the ocean has more krill overall. It gets bigger because the krill clump together so tightly that one giant gulp can swallow a fortune of food at once. Remember the lunge. Charging the swarm and opening that huge mouth is expensive. It only pays off if the swarm is dense enough to make the bite worth it. Thin, scattered krill are not worth the effort, but a thick, crowded patch, the kind that upwelling and ice age seas created, pays back the giant bite many times over. So the dense patches change the math. In a sea full of thick krill swarms, the biggest mouths won. A whale that could open wide and swallow a huge chunk of a dense cloud got far more food per gulp than a small whale could. The richer and denser the swarms, the more a giant body paid off. This is the heart of the whole story. The cooling world and the rising deep water built oceans full of thick, packed krill, and those packed swarms quietly rewarded any whale that grew a bigger mouth to scoop them up. Which leads straight to the strangest law of the blue whale's existence. The reason a bigger mouth wins is a matter of simple shapes and numbers, and once you see it, you understand why these whales kept growing and growing and growing. The ocean changed its rules, and the new rule had 3 parts. Food came in clumps, the clumps sat far apart, and they only showed up in certain seasons. This new pattern of food is the real reason the blue whale grew so big, so understanding it is worth a careful look. Picture 2 different worlds. In the first world, food is spread out evenly, a little bit everywhere, all the time. In a world like that, you do not need to be big or travel far. You just graze wherever you are like a sheep in a field that never runs out. Small bodies do fine. There is no prize for being giant. Now picture the second world, the world the Ice Age built. Here, food is not spread out at all. It comes in giant feasts, packed into a few rich spots, and only during certain times of year. Between those feasts lie long, hungry stretches of empty sea. To survive in this world, you have to do 3 hard things. Travel far to reach the feasts, eat enormous amounts fast when you find one, and store enough fuel to cross the empty stretches in between. That second world is exactly where a giant thrives. Look at the 3 demands again. Travel far. A big body with a big fuel tank can cross huge distances. Eat fast. A big mouth can swallow a fortune of krill in a single gulp. Store fuel. A big body can pack on thick blubber to ride out the lean times. Every one of those demands rewards being large. So the Ice Age Sea did something sneaky. It quietly punished small whales and rewarded big ones, generation after generation. A slightly bigger whale could reach the patches, gulp more per bite, and store more fat. It survived the lean stretches a little better, raised more young, and passed on its size. Over many generations, the whales crept bigger and bigger, pushed upward by the patchy seasonal feast. This is how evolution works. There is no plan, no goal. The ocean simply made bigness pay, again and again, and so the whales grew. Slowly, across millions of years, modest whales turned into the giants we know. And here is a clue that this is the right answer. The giant size did not appear in just one kind of whale. Several different baleen whales, not closely related, all started growing big around the same time. That is a strong sign the cause was something outside the whales, something in the ocean itself, pushing them all the same way. The patchy Ice Age sea was that something. So the picture comes together. The world cooled. Ice ground the land into rich dust. Strong winds drove upwelling, lifting deep food into the light. The krill bloomed in dense packed swarms that appeared in certain spots and certain seasons, and that patchy feast quietly rewarded any whale with a bigger mouth and a bigger fuel tank. The blue whale is the result, the largest animal ever built by ice and wind and tiny shrimp. But this still leaves a puzzle. If bigger is better, why are there not whales even bigger than the blue whale? Why did the growing stop where it did? It turns out there is a hidden ceiling, an invisible wall that no animal can climb past, and the blue whale is pressed right up against it. A bigger mouth wins, and the reason comes down to simple shapes. To understand why blue whales kept growing, picture the giant gulp one more time and think about what happens when the whale gets bigger. When a blue whale lunges, the amount of water and krill it can swallow depends on the size of its mouth and pouch. Make the whale bigger, and the mouth and pouch get bigger too. But here is the clever part. The mouth and pouch grow even faster than the rest of the body. As a blue whale gets larger, its mouth becomes huge compared to the rest of it. A giant blue whale is, in a way, a swimming mouth with a body attached. This means that as the whale grows, each gulp pays off more and more. A small filter feeder takes a small bite and gets a small meal. A giant takes a bite that is enormous compared to its body and gets a feast. So the bigger the whale, the more food it scoops per gulp, and the more efficient its feeding becomes. Size rewards itself. Scientists tested this by tagging whales of different sizes and measuring their feeding. The pattern held. The bigger lunge feeders captured far more food per gulp, getting more bang for each expensive bite. In a sea full of dense krill, a giant simply feeds better than a small whale ever could. So in the patchy, krill-rich Ice Age ocean, the math pushed hard toward giants. Bigger mouth, bigger gulp, bigger payoff, more young, more size passed on. Round and round the cycle went, building the whales up over millions of years. But notice the trap tightening as the whale grows. A bigger gulp brings more food, yes, but a bigger body also burns more fuel just to stay alive. And there is another twist. To fill that giant mouth, the whale needs the krill swarms to be very thick. A small whale can get by on a thin patch. A giant needs a dense packed swarm to make its huge, costly bite worthwhile. The bigger you get, the richer the swarm you need to keep yourself fed. So as whales grew, they became more and more dependent on finding those rare, super dense patches of krill. A giant cannot make a living on scattered food. It must find the thickest swarms in the sea, and it must find enough of them. This is the hidden cost of being huge. More power, but a narrower path. More food per bite, but a hungrier body and a pickier need for rich swarms. This is why the blue whale is locked so tightly into its way of life. Its giant size only works in an ocean with dense krill. Take away the thick swarms, and the whole giant machine starts to fail. The same size that made it the champion of the krill-rich seas would doom it in a poorer ocean. So bigness is a deal with strings attached. The blue whale won the prize of being the largest animal ever, but only by chaining itself completely to krill, and only as long as the swarms stay thick. And that chain leads to a chilling question. If bigger keeps winning, why did the whales stop at the blue whale's size? Why not bigger still? The answer is a hard wall, a limit set by the body itself, and the blue whale is jammed right up against it. There is a hidden ceiling on how big an animal can get, and the blue whale is pressed right up against it. We have seen that bigger whales feed better, gulping more krill with each lunge. So a fair question is, why are there no whales the size of 2 blue whales? Why not even bigger? If size keeps winning, what stopped the growth? The answer is one of the most important ideas in this whole story. Being big has a price, and that price rises faster than the rewards. At some point, the cost of being huge catches up with the benefits, and the growth has to stop. The blue whale sits almost exactly at that stopping point. Here is the squeeze. A bigger body needs more food to stay alive. The larger you grow, the more fuel you burn every single day, just keeping that giant body running. Meanwhile, the food in the sea is limited. There is only so much krill, packed into only so many swarms. So as a whale grows, it has to find more and more food to feed a body that is getting hungrier and hungrier. For a while, the bigger gulp keeps up with the bigger appetite. The whale scoops more per bite, which pays for its larger body. But this cannot go on forever. Eventually, the body gets so large and so hungry that even the giant gulp cannot bring in enough. The whale would need swarms thicker than the ocean can reliably grow. At that point, growing any bigger would mean starving. Scientists found a beautiful clue that the blue whale really is near this limit. They studied the smallest filter-feeding whales and discovered something surprising. Those small whales are right at the bottom edge of the size that lunge feeding can support. Go any smaller, and the gulp would be too tiny to pay for the effort. So filter feeding has a flaw, and the blue whale shows there is a ceiling too. It is jammed up near the largest size that the ocean's krill can support. Bigger than this, and there simply would not be enough dense krill in the world to keep the body fed. The blue whale is not big by accident. It is big right up to the very edge of what is possible, and no further. Think of it like a Goldilocks zone for giants. Too small, and lunge feeding does not pay. Too big, and the world cannot feed you. The blue whale lives at the far end of the just right zone, the largest a krill-eating giant can possibly be on this planet. That is a stunning thought. The blue whale is not just the biggest animal that has ever lived. It may be close to the biggest animal that ever could live, given how this ocean works. It has pushed life right up to a wall built by simple math, the balance between food gained and food burned. So the giant exists in a tiny window. It needed the Ice Age seas to grow this big, and it cannot grow bigger because the ocean cannot feed a larger body. It is balanced on a razor's edge of size, food, and luck, and living on that edge comes with a terrible weakness. Because the blue whale grew so perfectly into one single way of life, it now has no way out of it. It is trapped by its own success. The blue whale is trapped inside its own giant body, locked into one way of life with no way to change. This is the dark side of being the perfect krill eater. The blue whale grew so big and tuned itself so completely to one job that it lost the freedom to do anything else. Every part of it, the giant mouth, the strainer, the narrow throat, the huge fuel tank, exists to hunt swarms of tiny krill. And only that. Think about what that means. A blue whale cannot decide to eat fish if the krill run short. Its narrow throat could not swallow them well, and its whole body is built for straining, not chasing. It cannot shrink down to need less food. Its size is locked in. It cannot switch oceans or change its whole way of feeding. The giant is bound to krill the way a key is bound to one lock. Smaller whales have more choices. Some of the medium-sized filter feeders are quicker and more nimble, able to chase different kinds of prey and switch when one runs low. They kept their options open. The blue whale traded all of that away for size. It became the champion of dense krill, the best in the world at one single thing, and gave up the ability to be anything else. When the krill are thick, this trade is a triumph. The blue whale outfeeds everything. It grows huge, stores fat, crosses oceans, and rules the cold seas as the largest animal of all time. The narrow path leads straight to a crown. But when the krill thin out, the same trade becomes a trap. A giant tied to one food, in a body too big to easily feed and too specialized to change, has nowhere to turn. There is no backup plan built into a blue whale. The whole creature is a bet that the krill will always be there, thick and ready. For most of the blue whale's history, that bet paid off. The Ice Age seas grew krill in vast, dependable swarms, and the giants thrived. The whale's deep specialization matched a world that reliably delivered its one food. The danger comes when the world changes. If the swarms shrink, if the dense patches fail, the blue whale cannot adapt fast. Evolution that took millions of years to build cannot be undone in a single lifetime. A giant facing a krill crash is like a master of one trade suddenly finding that the only job in the world is gone, with no time to learn another. So the blue whale carries a hidden weakness inside its strength. Its perfect fit to the krill-rich ocean is exactly what makes it fragile if that ocean shifts. The same narrow path that led to the crown could lead off a cliff. This is the deepest answer to our question. The blue whale should not exist, because being this big is a wildly risky strategy, balanced on a knife's edge of food and size. It exists only because a frozen krill-rich chapter of Earth's history made that risky bet pay off. again and again, for millions of years. But what happens when the krill actually do fail? It is not just a thought experiment. The blue whale has already faced a moment when its world collapsed almost overnight, and the cause was not ice or wind or shrinking swarms. The cause was us. The greatest danger the blue whale ever faced did not come from the sea. It came from people, and it nearly erased the largest animal of all time in a single lifetime. For most of human history, blue whales were safe from us. They were too big, too fast, and too far out in the open ocean for early boats and simple tools to catch. People hunted smaller, slower whales for their oil and meat, but the blue whale mostly swam beyond reach. Its size and speed were its shield. Then that shield broke. In the 1800s, people invented new weapons and new ships that changed everything. A powerful harpoon that could be fired like a cannon. Fast boats driven by steam engines that could finally chase down a swimming giant. Suddenly the blue whale was within reach, and the hunt began in earnest. What happened next was one of the fastest collapses in the history of life. Whaling fleets spread across the world's oceans, hunting blue whales for the oil packed into their giant bodies. The numbers they took are staggering. In a single peak season, around the 1930s, whalers killed close to 30,000 blue whales, 30,000 giants, in 1 year. Across the worst stretch of the hunt, in the seas around the frozen South alone, whalers killed hundreds of thousands of blue whales. A creature that had ruled the oceans for millions of years was being wiped out in mere decades. The largest animal ever to exist was vanishing almost overnight. By the time it was over, the blue whale had been pushed to the very edge. Before the hunting, there may have been hundreds of thousands of blue whales in the seas. Afterward, only a few thousand were left scattered across the entire planet. In one part of the Southern Ocean, the giants were hunted down to a tiny fraction of their old numbers. The blue whale came terrifyingly close to being gone forever. Stop and feel the weight of that. The biggest animal that has ever lived on Earth, a creature built by millions of years of ice and ocean, was almost erased in less time than a single human lifetime. Not by a changing climate, not by failing krill, by harpoons and engines. It is a hard thing to sit with. The blue whale survived the rise and fall of the ice ages. It survived the long fasts in the empty oceans. It pushed life right up to the edge of what size is possible. And then, in a few short decades, it nearly fell to us. There was a strange mercy buried in the disaster, though it offers little comfort. The whales were so reduced, so scattered and few, that hunting them stopped being worth the effort. The fleets had nearly run out of giants to kill. Finally, people acted. In the 1960s, the world agreed to ban the hunting of blue whales and give them protection across the globe. The harpoons fell silent. For the first time in over a century, the largest animal on Earth was allowed to simply live. But after such a fall, could the blue whale ever truly come back? With so few left, spread so thin across the vast ocean, the giants faced a long, uncertain road. And the story of what happened next holds both hope and warning. After the hunting stopped, the great question was whether the blue whale could ever recover, or whether it had been pushed too far to return. The situation looked grim. The world's blue whales had crashed from hundreds of thousands down to a few scattered thousand. The survivors were spread thin across enormous oceans. For an animal that already lived far apart and bred slowly, that was a dangerous place to be. A female blue whale usually has just one calf every few years. There is no quick rebound for a creature that breeds that slowly. Recovery, if it came at all, would take a very long time, and the danger had not fully ended even after the ban. For years afterward, some hunting continued in secret, breaking the rules and killing whales that were supposed to be protected. The giants were given protection on paper, but the ocean is vast and hard to watch. It took time before the killing truly stopped. So scientists watched and waited, counting whales season after season, listening for their songs, hoping for any sign that the numbers were creeping back up. For a long time, the picture was uncertain. In many parts of the world, blue whales remain terribly rare, and some populations showed little sign of bouncing back. Then came a glimmer of hope, and it came from the waters off the coast of California. There, scientists studying the local blue whales found something they had hardly dared to expect. The California blue whales had climbed back toward their old numbers, recovering to close to what they likely were before the hunting ever began. One battered population had, against the odds, nearly healed. That recovery is a powerful sign. It shows that when the killing stops and the food is there, the blue whale can come back. Slowly, calf by calf, season by season, the giants can rebuild. The damage of the hunting era was deep, but it does not have to be the end of the story. There are other hopeful signs too. In the seas around the frozen south, where the slaughter had been worst, scientists on a recent expedition were thrilled to find blue whales gathering again in numbers they described as unexpected. After decades of near silence, the giants were returning to old feeding grounds, drawn back to the rich krill waters their ancestors once ruled. These returns matter beyond the whales themselves. A healthy ocean grows thick krill, and thick krill feed giants. So the return of blue whales is a sign that some parts of the sea are still rich and alive, still able to support the largest animal that has ever existed. The whales are like a giant living gauge of the ocean's health. When they thrive, the sea beneath them is thriving too. Still, the recovery is fragile and far from finished. Across the world, blue whales remain few. Some groups have barely recovered at all. The species is still counted among those at risk, a long way from the great abundance of the past. The giants are coming back, but slowly, and they are not safe yet. Because even now, with the harpoons long silent, the blue whale faces new dangers. The hunting era is over, but humans still crowd the oceans, and our ships and our changing climate have become threats of a different kind. The blue whale survived us once. Now it must survive us again. The harpoons are gone, but the blue whale faces new dangers now, and some of them are quieter and harder to fight. The first new threat moves fast and hits hard. Ships. The oceans today are crowded with huge cargo vessels, faster and more numerous than ever before, and blue whales, which feed near the surface and swim slowly, sometimes wander straight into the paths of these giant boats. A collision between a ship and a whale is brutal. The ship is enormous and made of steel, and even a creature the size of a blue whale can be badly hurt or killed when one strikes it. Off busy coastlines, ship strikes have become a real and steady danger. Whales gather to feed in waters that also carry heavy boat traffic, and the two cross paths. Over the years, a number of blue whales have been killed or hurt this way along crowded shipping lanes. It is a cruel twist. A giant that survived the harpoons can still be lost to a passing freighter that never even saw it. People are working to fix this. In some areas, ships are now asked to slow down in places where whales feed, because a slower ship is easier for a whale to avoid, and less deadly if it does hit. Shipping lanes have been shifted to steer boats around the richest feeding grounds. These efforts help, but the ocean is busy, and the danger has not gone away. The second new threat is slower, larger, and far harder to escape. The changing climate. Remember what made the blue whale possible in the first place? Cold, rich seas full of thick swarms of krill. The whole giant body depends on those dense swarms being there, season after season. Take away the krill, and the giant has no backup. Now the oceans are warming. As the water heats up, it changes where and how the krill can live. In some places, the swarms may grow thinner, or shift to new spots, or appear at the wrong times. For an animal locked completely into eating krill with no way to switch foods, that is a frightening change. The blue whale's deepest strength, its perfect fit to a krill-rich sea, becomes its deepest weakness if that sea begins to fail. This is the trap we saw earlier, returning in real life. The blue whale cannot adapt quickly. Its body took millions of years to tune itself to dense krill. If the krill move or shrink faster than the whales can follow, the giants could find themselves swimming through an ocean that no longer feeds them. So the blue whale stands at a strange crossroads. On one side, real hope. The hunting has stopped, and in some places the giants are coming back. On the other side, new threats. Crowded shipping lanes and a warming, shifting sea that could thin out the very food the whale cannot live without. The same creature that pushed life to the very edge of size is now balanced on a new edge, between recovery and fresh danger. Its future depends in large part on choices that people make, and there is still so much about these giants that we do not know. For all our science, for all our listening and counting and tagging, the blue whale keeps secrets from us. Some of the most basic questions about its life remain unanswered. For all that we have learned about the blue whale, some of the simplest questions about it remain mysteries. Start with a basic one. How long does a blue whale live? You might think we would know this easily for the largest animal on Earth, but measuring the age of a creature that lives for decades in the open ocean is shockingly hard. You cannot exactly ask it. Scientists found one clever trick. Inside a blue whale's ear sits a long plug of waxy material that builds up over its life. As the whale goes through its yearly cycle of feasting and fasting, the wax lays down layers, light and dark, a bit like the rings inside a tree trunk. By counting those layers in the earwax of a whale that has died, scientists can estimate how many years it lived. What they found is that blue whales live a long time. Many reach the age of a human grandparent, and some live far longer. There are signs that the oldest blue whales may live to around 90 years, and a few perhaps even longer than that. The exact limit is still uncertain. We are reading the age of a giant from the wax in its ear, and the full story of how long these creatures can live is still being pieced together. Here is another deep mystery. We do not fully know where many blue whales go to breed. We know they head for warmer waters in the cold season, but the exact spots where they gather to mate and give birth are not all mapped. For an animal this enormous, that is humbling. The largest creature on Earth slips off into the wide ocean each year, and we lose track of where some of them go. And remember the songs. We can record them perfectly. We can hear the long repeating patterns and even tell different groups apart by their accents. We can measure how the songs have slowly dropped in pitch over the decades. Yet we still cannot fully read what the songs mean, or say for certain why they are changing across the whole planet at once. A language rolls through the deep, and we are still standing outside it, listening, not quite understanding. There are smaller puzzles too. Exactly how the whale makes its giant sounds without a normal voice box is still being worked out. How it navigates across blank oceans with such accuracy is still partly a guess. Even basic counts of how many blue whales are left in some regions carry a lot of uncertainty, because the ocean is so vast and the whales so spread out. It is strange and wonderful that the biggest animal that has ever lived can still hide so much from us. We share the planet with it right now. We have ships, microphones, tags, and cameras. And the blue whale still keeps its age, its breeding grounds, its songs, and parts of its very body a mystery. That mystery is part of why the blue whale matters so much. It is a reminder that the ocean is still wild, still deep, still full of things we have not figured out. The largest creature of all time is also one of the least understood. So let us pull the whole story together. Why does this impossible giant exist at all? And what does its strange, fragile, record-breaking life mean for the rest of us? Step back and look at the whole creature now, and you will see why the blue whale should not exist, and exactly how it does. By every simple rule, a body this big should fail. It should not be able to feed itself on specks of shrimp. Its heart should struggle to push blood from end to end. It should starve on the long fasts, sink under its own weight, or break down from the speed of its own growth. The blue whale stands against all of that, the largest animal ever, alive in our oceans right now. It pulls off the impossible through a chain of perfect tricks, each one balanced on the edge of what is possible. A mouth that swallows a swimming pool, a pouch that unfolds like an accordion, a strainer made of fingernails, a throat no wider than a melon, a heart the size of a car that slows almost to a stop on a dive, a tongue as heavy as an elephant, milk thick as toothpaste that grows a bus into a giant in months, a voice that crosses oceans, a body that runs for months on stored fat alone, and behind all of it stands the reason for the size itself. A frozen chapter of Earth's history, ice grinding the land into rich dust, strong winds pulling deep food up into the light, krill blooming in dense packed swarms that came in patches, far apart, only in certain seasons. That patchy feast quietly rewarded any whale with a bigger mouth and a bigger fuel tank, generation after generation, until the giants rose. The blue whale is the result of that ancient bargain. It grew right up to the very ceiling of how big a krill eater can be, the largest size this ocean can possibly feed. It became the champion of dense krill by giving up every other option, chaining itself completely to one tiny food. When the swarms are thick, that bargain makes it a king. When the swarms fail, the same bargain leaves it terribly exposed. So the blue whale is a creature balanced on a knife's edge. Edge of size, where any bigger would mean starving. Edge of food, where its whole life depends on swarms staying thick. Edge of luck, where it took a rare and frozen moment in Earth's history to build it, and a warming ocean could undo it. The giant exists in a narrow window of possibility, and that window is not guaranteed to stay open. That is what makes the blue whale so much more than just a big animal. It is living proof of how rich and powerful the ocean once was, and still can be. A sea that can grow the largest creature of all time is a sea bursting with life from the smallest plant on up. The whale is the top of a tower built on countless tiny things, and the whole tower has to be healthy to hold it up. So when we ask why the blue whale exists, we are really asking about the health of the whole ocean. The giant is a sign. While blue whales swim and sing and feast, the sea beneath them is alive and rich. If they begin to fail, it is a warning that the tower below them is shaking, and that connects the fate of this impossible giant directly to us, and to choices we are making right now. The story of the blue whale is, in the end, tied tightly to our own. We have already shaped its fate once. We nearly erased the largest animal of all time with harpoons and engines, and then we chose to stop and gave it the chance to recover. That choice mattered. In some seas, the giants are coming back because people decided to let them. Now we hold its future again, in quieter ways. The ships we sail and the climate we're changing will help decide whether the blue whale keeps recovering or slides back toward danger. Slow the ships in feeding waters, and fewer giants die under steel hulls. Keep the cold seas rich and the krill swarms thick, and the whales have the food their giant bodies need. Let the ocean warm too far and the krill thin out, and the most specialized giant of all could find itself swimming through a sea that no longer feeds it. This is why the blue whale matters to you, even if you never see one. It is a living gauge of the health of the entire ocean. The sea covers most of our planet and shapes the air we breathe and the weather we live in. A blue whale thriving in that sea is a sign the whole system is working. A blue whale struggling is a sign that something deep is going wrong. There is something almost unbelievable about sharing the earth with this creature at all. Think about it. The largest animal that has ever existed, bigger than any dinosaur, is alive at the exact same time as you. Right now, as you breathe, a blue whale somewhere is rising to the surface to take a breath of the same air. Its heart, the size of a small car, is beating. Its low voice is rolling through the deep. We almost lost the chance to say that. For a while, the blue whale was vanishing so fast that it might have become a creature people only knew from old photographs and bones in a museum. The biggest animal of all time, gone, with no one left alive to have seen it swim. We came close to that future. We pulled back from it just in time. So the blue whale is a gift and a test at once. A gift because we get to share our world with the most enormous life this planet has ever produced. A test because keeping it here depends on us caring enough to leave the ocean rich and safe enough for a giant to live in. The whale itself asks for very little. It does not hunt us. It could not swallow us if it tried. It wants only thick swarms of tiny krill in cold, rich seas, an open water to cross and sing across. Give it that, and it will go on doing the impossible, growing bus-sized babies, crossing oceans on stored fat, singing songs that travel for hundreds of miles. It has been balanced on its knife's edge for millions of years, through ice and warmth, feast and famine, holding on against all the rules that say it should not be here, which leaves one last thing to face. After everything we have seen, the real answer to our question is stranger and more wonderful than it first appeared. So why do blue whales exist when everything about them says they should not? We can finally answer it. They exist because, for one rare and frozen stretch of Earth's history, the ocean made the impossible bet pay off. The cooling world ground the land into food. The deep water rose and bloomed with krill. The swarms packed themselves into dense, rich clouds. And that one strange arrangement quietly rewarded the biggest mouth, the biggest fuel tank, the biggest body over millions of years, until the largest animal of all time rose out of the cold seas. The blue whale is what happens when a planet, by pure chance, builds the perfect conditions for a giant, and life rushes in to fill them. It is not an accident, and it is not a sure thing. It is a knife's edge balance of food and size and luck, held steady for a few million years by ice and wind and tiny shrimp. That is the deeper truth hiding inside the question. The blue whale should not exist by simple rules, and that is exactly why it is so precious. It is proof that the impossible can happen when everything lines up just right. It is the ocean showing off the absolute limit of how large life can grow on this world. And here is the part that should stay with you. That limit is alive right now. The largest creature in the history of the planet is not a fossil. It is not a story. It is out there in the cold, dark sea today, breathing, beating, singing, feasting on clouds of krill, crossing whole oceans on the fat of its own body. We almost lost it. We hunted it to the edge of nothing and then, just in time, chose to let it live. Now its future rests on whether we keep the seas rich and safe enough for a giant to swim in. The blue whale survived the ice ages and the harpoons. Whether it survives the warming ocean is a story still being written, and we are holding the pen. So the next time you picture something huge, do not reach for a dinosaur. The real record holder is alive, a creature longer than 3 school buses, with a heart the size of a car and a tongue as heavy as an elephant, gliding through the deep at this very moment, half a world away. It feeds on the smallest food in the sea and grew into the biggest body that has ever lived. It runs on stored fat for months. It sings songs that cross oceans and slowly change in ways we cannot explain. It is balanced on the very edge of what a body can be, and it has held that balance for millions of years. The blue whale should not exist, and yet it does. Out there, right now, the largest heartbeat on Earth is rolling through the dark water, slow and steady, like a drum that has been beating since before the ice. Listen for it. Protect the sea it swims in, and never forget that you got to live at the same time as the most impossible giant the world has ever made.